What are you carrying in your wallet right now? Perhaps a few sheets of polymer notes, right? But have you ever truly paused, looked at them, and thought seriously about their true nature? That piece of paper, or those numbers dancing across your banking app screen, in themselves, they are almost worthless. You can't eat them to ease your hunger. You can't wear them to keep warm on a freezing night. They are just paper, plastic, lines of code, and bits. And yet, by some miraculous invention of human society, these very pieces of lifeless paper and digits can buy you a luxurious meal at a fine restaurant, a home to shelter your family, or even a future for your children. Why is that? Why is it that nearly 8 billion people on this planet agree to grant such enormous power to objects that have no intrinsic value? The answer does not lie in the material that money is made of, nor in the ink, nor in the security features. It lies in one of the greatest, most dramatic, and most important stories in all of human history. It is a story about trust, power, creativity, and sometimes even our own madness. Today, we will embark on a journey stretching over 5,000 years to decode what may well be the most powerful creation humanity has ever forged: money. Long before shiny coins and colorful paper notes ever appeared, our ancestors lived in a world that was very, very different. A world without price tags, without credit cards, without bank transfers, where only one primitive form of trade existed: barter. At first glance, it sounds simple and fair, doesn't it? I have what you need, you have what I want. Let's just trade. A perfectly balanced deal. But imagine living a single day in that world, and you'll quickly see how complicated it could become. Meet Grug, a skilled fisherman of his tribe. After battling the sea all morning, he catches a fine bluefin tuna. But his animal skin shoes are torn after many trips, and he desperately needs a new pair to protect his feet. Luckily, in his village lives Eep, the best shoemaker in the region. A perfect exchange is about to happen, right? Grug brings the fish to Eep and offers it in trade for a pair of shoes. But Eep shakes her head. "Thanks, Grug. That fish does look delicious, but just yesterday I traded for a whole basket of fish. My family can't finish them all. What I really need now is some grain to bake bread for tonight's dinner." And there lies the core problem. Economists today call it the double coincidence of wants. In simple terms, not only must you find someone who has what you need, but that person must also want exactly what you have, and at the exact moment you are offering it. Poor Grug cannot get his shoes immediately. He must begin a tiring chain of trades. First, find someone who needs fish and has meat to offer. Then, trade the fish for meat. Next, find a farmer who needs meat but has grain. Only then can he return to Eep with the grain to finally trade for shoes. By the end of the day, he might succeed in getting his shoes, but his fresh tuna from the morning has probably already spoiled. And that's only the problem of finding the right match. What about the issue of value? How many shoes is one tuna worth? Half a pair? 2 pairs? How many stone axes should a fat cow be worth? 10? 20? Without a common unit of value, every trade became a tense negotiation, time-consuming, inefficient, and often frustrating. Of course, from an anthropological perspective, bartering had an unexpected benefit. It tightened community bonds. Exchanges were personal, built on trust and relationships passed down over generations. It wasn't just about material trade, but also about favors, reciprocity, and mutual help within a small community. But as societies grew larger, when the first cities rose in Mesopotamia and Egypt, when trade expanded beyond the limits of a single village, this nightmare of coincidence became a heavy burden, strangling economic growth. Humanity needed a solution, something more universal, something more convenient. And then, a brilliant idea emerged, almost simultaneously in different parts of the world. Instead of endlessly trying to trade goods directly, Why not choose one special type of good that everyone desires, everyone recognizes as valuable, and use it as a universal medium of exchange? Welcome to the age of commodity money. One of the earliest and most successful examples was salt. In the ancient world, salt was known as white gold. Its value didn't just come from seasoning food, but more importantly, from its role as the most essential food preservative. Salt allowed people to store meat and fish and survive harsh winters. Every household needed it. It could be easily divided for small transactions, and it was durable when stored properly. In ancient Rome, part of the empire's strength came from its control of salt mines. Legionnaires guarding the legendary salt road, Via Salaria, were sometimes paid with bags of precious salt. The Latin word for salt is sal. From this, the allowance given to soldiers to buy salt was called salarium. Familiar? Yes, the English word salary comes directly from this. So, every time you receive your paycheck, remember, historically, you're receiving your salt money. But salt was not the only form of commodity money. In West Africa, tiny and beautiful cowrie shells, durable and nearly impossible to counterfeit, dominated trade for thousands of years, spreading even into Asia and parts of Europe. In Mesoamerica, the Aztecs and Mayans used cacao beans, the raw ingredient of chocolate. Historical records note that a rabbit could be bought for just 10 cacao beans. On the remote island of Yap in the Pacific, people used enormous carved limestone discs known as rye stones. Some were taller than a man and weighed several tons. Obviously too large to move, so how did they trade? Simply by word of mouth. Ownership transferred from family A to family B, witnessed by the community. A fascinating example of a public ledger system thousands of years before the idea of blockchain was born. From a cultural perspective, the choice of commodity money reveals much about a society's values. People chose what they considered most vital for survival or most spiritually meaningful. Cattle, for instance, were once a major form of money in many nomadic cultures. A person's wealth was measured by the number of animals they owned. Clearly, commodity money was a huge leap forward compared to bartering. It solved the double coincidence of wants problem neatly, but it still had major drawbacks. Grain could rot, cattle could fall sick and die, salt could dissolve in rain, and carrying a heavy sack of wheat to the market just to buy a pair of sandals was still terribly inconvenient. Humanity needed something better, more durable, rarer, easier to transport, divisible, and recognizable. And then the answer appeared: gold, silver, and copper. These precious metals seemed almost designed to be money. They had nearly every quality an ideal currency needed. They do not rust or decay with time. A Roman gold coin minted 2,000 years ago still holds the same metallic value today. Their supply in nature is limited. They cannot be created out of thin air, which helps preserve their worth. They are shiny, distinctive in color, making it easy to distinguish real from fake. They can be melted and recast into bars or coins of different weights without losing value. At first, around 3000 BC in Mesopotamia and Egypt, people used irregular lumps of silver for trade. But every transaction required weighing them on scales, an inconvenient and time-consuming process. The real breakthrough, one of the greatest turning points in monetary history, came around 600 BC in a wealthy kingdom called Lydia in present-day Turkey. The Lydian kings had a revolutionary idea. Instead of weighing metal each time, why not mint pieces of metal into standardized weights and stamp them with the king's official seal? That seal, often a lion's head, symbol of Lydian royalty, was not just decoration. It was a guarantee, a promise from the highest authority. I, the king, assure you this coin has the correct weight and purity. And so, the world's first coins were born. This was not just a technological innovation, it was a revolution of trust. For the first time in history, the value of money did not only lie in its material, but also in the backing of a political authority, the state. Merchants no longer needed scales or expert knowledge. They simply trusted the king's seal.
This invention spread rapidly. The Greeks, Persians, and later the Romans quickly adopted and perfected coinage across their vast empires. Coins fueled an explosion of trade and became powerful tools of political propaganda. Whenever a new emperor rose to power, he minted coins with his portrait. These coins served as miniature billboards of authority, circulating everywhere, silently proclaiming, "This is your ruler." Minting coins became a supreme privilege of the state, a symbol of sovereignty itself. But with such power came a deadly temptation. When empires needed more money for wars or extravagant projects, they often debased their coins, mixing in cheaper metals like copper or tin while keeping the same face value. At first, people didn't notice.
But over time, coins felt lighter, looked different, and trust eroded. People hoarded old, purer coins and spent only the debased ones. Inflation soared, prices skyrocketed, and economic instability set in. This loss of trust contributed significantly to the decline of mighty Rome, a bitter lesson history would repeat many times. When trust in money collapses, an entire society can collapse with it. Metal coins were powerful, but they still had limits. They were heavy and cumbersome. Imagine being a silk merchant carrying a chest full of gold coins across long trade routes. You'd be an easy target for bandits. As trade grew larger, merchants needed something lighter, safer, and more convenient. Once again, a revolutionary idea arose, this time from the East. During the Tang Dynasty in 7th century China, commerce flourished along the Silk Road. Merchants sometimes had to move hundreds of kilograms of copper coins for big deals, dangerous and impractical. To solve this, they devised a clever method. Instead of hauling heavy coins, they deposited them with a trusted merchant or organization in the city. In return, they received a paper certificate with a signature and seal. This was called flying money because it was as light as air compared to strings of copper coins. In essence, these were the first checks or promissory notes. They weren't money themselves, but promises that the holder could redeem real coins at any time. Later, during the Song Dynasty in the 11th century, the government saw the enormous potential of this system. They took over from private issuers and created the world's first state-backed paper currency, the jiaozi. This was an unimaginable leap in human thought. For the first time, something with almost no intrinsic value, just mulberry bark paper, was accepted as real money. Why? Because it was backed by the prestige and authority of the imperial government. The Song Dynasty promised you could always exchange jiaozi for metal coins at the state treasury. Trust had now shifted from precious metals to the promise of government. When the great Venetian traveler Marco Polo visited China in the 13th century, he was stunned. In his famous travelogue, he devoted an entire chapter to describe, in awe, how the Great Khan creates money from the bark of trees. To Europeans, used only to gold and silver, it seemed like sorcery. China's invention of paper money was centuries ahead of the rest of the world. Europe would not experiment with banknotes until the 17th century, first issued by private banks. But China also suffered the dark side of this power. Just like the Romans before them, later Chinese dynasties could not resist the temptation to simply print more money whenever wars or lavish spending drained the treasury. Soon, notes were issued without enough metal reserves to back them. The result was predictable. Runaway inflation, collapse of trust, economic chaos, contributing to the downfall of dynasties. History repeated its harsh lesson. Whether coins of gold or paper from trees, the foundation of money is always the same: trust. So, how could that trust be maintained on a global scale? As the world became increasingly connected through maritime trade routes, a new problem arose. Every nation had its own currency. A universal anchor was needed, something to stabilize the entire financial system. For a long time, that anchor was gold. In the 19th century, the British Empire rose to global dominance.
With unmatched naval power and vast trade networks, London became the world's financial capital. To create stability and confidence in international trade, a shared system was adopted, the gold standard. Its principle was simple. Every participating nation fixed its currency to a specific quantity of gold. 1 British pound equaled a certain number of grams of gold. 1 US dollar equaled another fixed amount. 1 French franc equaled yet another. This meant your paper money was not just paper. It was essentially a gold check, a guaranteed promise that you could exchange it at the central bank for real gold at any time. The gold standard brought about an unprecedented era of monetary stability. Exchange rates between countries were fixed, eliminating currency risk and fueling explosive growth in trade and investment. More importantly, it forced governments to be fiscally disciplined. They couldn't just print money unless they had enough gold reserves to back it. But what looked perfect had fatal flaws. A nation's money supply depended entirely on how much gold it had or could acquire. If the economy grew faster than its gold reserves, deflation occurred, choking growth. Conversely, during wars or crises, governments were handcuffed. They couldn't print more money to stimulate the economy or fund defense. World War I, the Great Depression of the 1930s, and World War II struck devastating blows to the gold standard. To finance massive war efforts, countries had no choice but to abandon it and print freely. After World War II, one last attempt to revive stability came at the Bretton Woods Conference of 1944. Under the new system, only the US dollar was pegged directly to gold at $35 per ounce. All other currencies were pegged to the dollar. But by the late 1960s, America overspent on the Vietnam War and ambitious social programs, printing far more dollars than its gold reserves could cover. Other nations, especially France, began demanding gold in exchange for their dollars. US gold reserves at Fort Knox started draining alarmingly. Then, on August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon addressed the world in a shocking broadcast. He announced the final severing of the link between the US dollar and gold. This Nixon shock ended the gold standard forever. For the first time in history, the entire global monetary system was backed by nothing tangible. The last anchor had been cut loose. Humanity entered a new era, bold, flexible, and risky. Welcome to the modern world, the world of fiat money. The word fiat comes from Latin, meaning "let it be so" or "by decree." And that's exactly what fiat money is. Money that has value simply because the government declares it so. That polymer banknote in your wallet can buy goods and services not because it is backed by gold, but because the law says it is legal tender, and, most importantly, because we all collectively believe that others will accept it. Its value no longer comes from gold in a vault, but from collective trust. Trust in the stability of the government, the strength of the national economy, and the wisdom of central banks in managing monetary policy. This represents the peak of money's abstraction. Its value is now 100% a social construct, sustained only by shared belief. The system also grants governments and economists enormous flexibility. Central banks can expand the money supply during recessions or tighten it to combat inflation. It is a powerful tool to steer entire economies. But, as history has shown again and again, from ancient Rome to Yuan dynasty China, this power is dangerous. If governments abuse the printing press, if they create money recklessly to cover deficits, trust evaporates overnight. Then comes hyperinflation, wiping out savings and plunging nations into chaos. We have seen this in Zimbabwe during the 2000s, or more recently in Venezuela, where people needed wheelbarrows full of banknotes just to buy a loaf of bread. From shells to salt, from gold to pure belief, the journey of money seems to have reached the ultimate stage of dematerialization. But is that really the end of the story? The entire system is secured by advanced cryptography,
making fraud nearly impossible. In essence, cryptocurrencies replaced trust in institutions with trust in mathematics and open-source code. This radical shift echoes something from long ago, the Rye Stones of Yap Island, where value and ownership were validated by community consensus, not by kings or states. But the future of money remains uncertain. Will cryptocurrencies go mainstream and replace fiat? Will governments issue their own digital currencies to compete? Will physical cash disappear entirely in the digital age? No one knows for sure.
One thing is certain. The story of money is far from over. It will keep evolving, transforming, and reshaping itself, reflecting changes in technology, society, and above all, in how we define value and trust. From our ancestors' clumsy barter trades to the salty wages of Roman soldiers, the shining coins of Lydia, the fragile paper notes of the Song dynasty, the rise and fall of the gold standard, and today's age of digital numbers and blockchain code, the history of money mirrors the history of human civilization itself. It is a story of how we, as a species, learn to cooperate, to build complex and abstract systems held together not by force or by metal, but by something invisible and powerful: trust. So next time you hold a banknote in your hand, remember, it is not just a piece of paper. It is the distilled essence of 5,000 years of history, of countless inventions, mighty empires, devastating wars, and, above all, a silent agreement among billions of humans to believe in its value. Isn't it astonishing? The story of money shows us that even the most ordinary things in our daily lives often hide the most extraordinary histories. And if you enjoy journeys of discovery like this, if today's adventure has given you a fresh perspective, then a simple like is a huge encouragement for us at Origin Stories. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you won't miss our next explorations into the wonders of history, culture, and human imagination. Finally, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think the future of money will look like? Do you trust government-backed fiat, the timeless stability of gold, or the disruptive potential of cryptocurrencies? Share your ideas in the comments below. We'd love to discuss and debate with you. Thank you for joining Origin Stories on this incredible journey. Goodbye for now, and see you in the next episode.